Okay with that. There we go. And welcome to our Eco-Friendly Rotary Club. Very happy to see you all. Very happy to see you if you're watching the recording later. Welcome. We'll go ahead and begin with our bell. We have a bell, so it's not going to sound probably, but that's okay. We're going to say ding, 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 ding. We have an ongoing issue with bells, but we'll go ahead and start the meeting with the bell. And for Lida and Eric, one thing that joins all Rotarians together across the globe is basically the four things that we all believe. We're not religious, we're not political, we have no affiliations whatsoever except for these four things. So feel free to join us if you want. I'm going to click through here, and the rest of you unmute your mic, please. And we'll start with the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. Is it the truth?
Truth.
Is it
fair to all
concerned?
Will it build
Goodwill and better friendships.
Will it be beneficial?
Beneficial to all
concerned.
Thank you so much, everyone. We do have, I should elaborate slightly, we do have 7 areas of focus as well in Rotary. And so one of those areas of focus, the latest one actually, right around the time of our birth as a club, is the environment. So there were 6 areas of focus before for the last, however many decades. They recently added a new one a couple of years back, and that's kind of one of the impetus, one of the catalysts for creation of this club, the Eco-Friendly Club. So we will start by seeing if we have any guests. I don't see any guests behind cameras or on our name of participants other than our speakers. So I'll go ahead and skip that and move on to announcements. We have, let's see, help me out here. So if you read your newsletter, we have no meeting on the 27th, and we have an opportunity. Ailish, do you want to speak on that real quick here? Do you have an opportunity to get together if you're in the Melbourne Cocoa area? If you can unmute later, we can talk about it again. Ailish, don't worry, we can get at the end of the call. Basically, we're going to have a great opportunity to get together if you're local to the Melbourne Cocoa area at a local park. And I don't want to spill the beans or steal the thunder of Ailish. It's a wonderful idea. She's going to share that in just a moment. Otherwise, are there any other big announcements? No? All right. And Kimberly, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there anything that you would like to share perhaps about fellowships?
Not at this particular moment. My apologies for being late. I'm teaching, so I had to send my students out to lunch, and nothing really new as far as fellowships are concerned. Just join one and get a Paul Harris. Join one and get a Paul Harris. They have pickleball. Mike said he's joined pickleball, and I didn't see one for trivia, but if there's one for if there's not one for trivia, Mike, and you want a trivia one, I gave you the handbook, and you can start your own trivia fellowship. If you have a special interest and they don't have a fellowship for it, there is a process for starting a fellowship. So feel free.
Thank you. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to turn it over. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Kimberly, I haven't joined yet. I checked it out. I'm going back to check it out some more.
And Denise is saying she would join the trivia fellowship. So if there's no trivia fellowship, you can start one. I'd join. I have a lot of trivia in my head. It's the retrieval that doesn't work as well as it used to, but there's a lot in there.
Just make the timer long enough and you'll whoop us.
Yeah, well. So yeah, join a fellowship, get a Paul Harris. I'm going to do it. I promise I'm going to do it. I just haven't gotten my act together yet, but I will.
And Ed, I caught you with looks like some ice cream or yogurt. I don't know, but what? I guess it's probably yogurt where you're at in your time zone, right?
No, it wasn't yogurt. Actually, I was just licking the spoon from the blue cheese dressing. But
oh, gross. Go ahead, Ed.
Okay. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everybody. I missed everyone last week. We were in Jamaica celebrating our 20th anniversary. But let's see, are there any birthdays, anniversaries? I don't see any hands up. Okay. Any let's start with happy dollars. Any happy dollars?
I've got let's do this. I've got 15 happy dollars because my niece finally gets to celebrate her quinceañera. And I'm down here in Mexico right now with family. And so she's going to celebrate her quinceañera. It's actually 2 years late. This is one of the effects of COVID, right? There's all these wonderful events that have been put off. Like imagine all the anniversaries and the weddings, right? So my niece is 2 years late and we're going to have her quinceañera this Saturday, and it's going to be huge and absolutely ridiculous. And I hope that I survive.
Awesome. You will. You'll
Congrats.
survive.
Kimberly, I see your hand up.
Yeah, well, I have a happy sad dollar for the football game, football match results, Netherlands and USA. I knew we were going to lose, but I was still hoping against hope. So I'm happy for Netherlands. I'm happy for Denise. I'm sad for us. Well, we can both put in happy sad dollars for the same thing, Denise. So that's my happy sad dollar.
Okay. So Denise, do you want to speak to that, or are you?
Well, yeah, I was gonna say the exact same thing as Kimberly. Of course, I'm very happy, mostly happy because, of course, we won. It was a great match, but you know, I'm also partly sad because I do feel a close connection to the US. So it was bittersweet.
Well, I guess I have a happy sad dollar, and this is in honor of our Gopher guests. I'm from Iowa, so I'm a Hawkeye, and so my happy sad dollar is I'm both happy and sad that Ohio State lost, but Michigan won. So for those of us in the Midwest that are sick of those teams winning all the time, that'd be my happy and sad dollar. Okay, anybody else?
My hand's up.
Michael?
Yes. When you live in LA and you're not from there, you just love watching the University of Spoiled Children lose. And as a result of them losing Friday night, we're into the playoffs. So that's a happy dollar. I'm happy to say Roger Pelser was right on top of getting his biography to me. And as soon as I can get my act together, I will be doing his member spotlight. So Roger, do not die before I do your spotlight.
I don't have any intentions of it. Thank you.
I don't know, how do you even respond to that, but I guess that's okay. Roger, your hand's up.
Yeah, I'm hoping you can hear me okay.
Yes.
This is a sad dollar. We got back from vacation, as you know, last week, but my wife contracted COVID. I have not. If I turn on the video, you'll see that I'm wearing a face mask around the house. She still has no fever, but she's still got some symptoms, still testing positive. So that's a sad dollar, but she is slowly getting better.
Well,
So that's good. Yeah.
all of our hopes for a speedy recovery. It's cool, glad to hear she's getting better. So
Thank you.
anybody else? Okay, well, I know we have two speakers, so let's get to it.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, what we'll do is I will introduce my dear friend Lida, and then Lida is going to introduce Eric. So Lida and I have some way back connections. Lida actually went to school, I think it was art history, and she got her master's in education. And she's kind of a hero of mine. She went to the Bronx. She taught, is it third grade or first grade? Third grade. Yeah, she taught third grade in the Bronx. I feel like you won a couple of awards, but she left Teach for America in the Bronx, and then she went to a small Yupik, you might say Eskimo, we would say Yupik village out in rural Alaska, right about here, if you know Alaska. And there she met myself, and she was a teacher there for, I think, 5 years. And she was so amazing that she was the district teacher of the year, and as such, a finalist for teacher of the year for the state of Alaska. She went from that bush village where she met her husband. What are the odds? They moved back to Minnesota. They have a beautiful family now, and she works as the coordinator of community partnerships in Rochester Public Schools. So with that, Lida, I will turn over to you and welcome. Thank you so much for coming to speak with us.
Oh, thank you. This is such a pleasure, and it's really exciting to get to talk about something that is really fun and exciting and super, personal to me. So I'm going to introduce my friend Eric Carr. And Eric and I work together through the public library. Eric's an amazing person. He's kind of one of those people that is fantastic to know because he will do anything. You can talk him into anything and he'll do it enthusiastically if it serves students, families, and community. But he really will. And that's part of the reason that I'm glad he's here today. His Rochester Public Library, where he works, is a national award winner. So we live in Rochester, Minnesota, and just a really incredible library. They do a lot of things that make them unique, but serve kids, community, families. Would you add anything to add, Eric?
That pretty much said it all. Yeah, I work in youth services and we are very community minded. So yeah, a lot of what we're going to talk about today is because of the library that I work at and how it does try to be more than just a building for books. Yeah.
So I'm going to share my screen. And we'll kind of tell you a little bit about, this will kind of explain a little bit more about what makes kind of our connection and our partnership beneficial for kids, families, and community. So today we're going to tell you about an opportunity that we built together around food access and opportunity for our community through collective impact. So obviously I'm from Rochester Public Schools. I was working at the time of this partnership at a school called Riverside Central Elementary School. We partnered with Alternative Learning Center, which is a middle and high school serving students with specific challenges.
Yeah, they don't necessarily. Yeah, I was just gonna say they don't necessarily, weren't, succeeding as much in the Normal Public Schools. So I love the fact that we have an alternative learning center here that provides them different avenues and resources for their education. It's an awesome place.
So while you're going to hear from both Eric and I just want to share that there were many other people involved in this. You just are getting us today to share about it. And through this opportunity, we were able to share 1 ton of produce with our community. So it's kind of a fun opportunity. Before we go any further, I do need to just really share with you that this partnership, this opportunity wouldn't be possible without this incredible woman named Liz Quackenbush. Part of what's challenging and probably for Eric and I and for the rest of the group and why some of the other members aren't here today is because actually we lost Liz in April of 2021 to domestic violence. And so I just really wanted to make sure that you see the wonderful person who was really the brains and power behind this, everything you're going to hear today. I will also mention that in the bottom left corner, you see a little card that has all of our logos on it. And at her funeral, we handed out these seeds for Liz. And so everyone who went to her funeral got a little card with some seeds that was reflective of part of what we utilized in our partnership. So just wanted to make sure we made that clear. So I'm going to share a little bit about our school garden, and feel free to jump in, chime in. Like, I'm not a very good, I would prefer, back and forth. So feel free to just jump in anytime. I can't see you. I can't see your hands. I'm just looking at my screen. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our garden and how we were able to engage school and community in our garden. And this hopefully will give you some ideas to get engaged in a garden in your community, or just some other ideas. So our garden was a vehicle for engaging families and community while integrating academics, activism, and then also just really building skills and opportunities for kids. So we really, the focus of our garden was student, staff, families, and community partners. So we really wanted to leverage anybody who was interested in getting engaged in this garden to do so. This is kind of a timeline, which I'll go through here. So first thing we got was we wanted to create this garden. We didn't have any garden beds. We didn't have a space for a garden, but we applied for some grant funding, statewide health improvement program funds, and we were awarded $3,000, and $1,500 of that went toward the garden. These are kind of the layout of the school garden that we built, or of the garden beds. We knew that it's really difficult to engage people in your garden if they're not involved in the process. And so we really had a lot of student engagement. Here you can see kids designing the garden space with those little, so we had multiple garden beds, and that was, the students were kind of in charge of creating these little plans that would be voted on. So this was like the final design that was selected, you can see. So there's 6 garden beds there, and we actually had a 7th. We really wanted to invest teachers and students. So we had kids planting, teachers planting. I could support that work in my role at the time. We decided that we were going to really engage. I know you can't see this very well, but these were all of the partners who were engaged in getting engaged in anything related to the garden. So we had, everybody from United Way to public health to the Boys and Girls Club. We had kids from the ALC, all sorts of stuff. We had support in constructing these. Obviously, I am not a person who, I didn't have the skills and the tools to be able to create these beds. And so I was able to engage some people from a local church to actually build the beds with us. You can see the construction process here. We actually had kids painting the outside to really kind of engage them. This is a video of a garden party that I don't think I'll share, but I'll share, maybe I'll just share a second of it here, just so you can kind of see. So the kind of the real goal behind that was really to just get everybody in one space at one time. There was a picture of the mayor there. We had a local pizzeria person who was making salsa. Just we had a local beekeeper. Anybody who had connections to a garden and we could engage in this garden, we invited that day and they were available. So it was really fun to have like all sorts of opportunities for kids to be able to connect to this. This is just some of the data that we had pulled. 550 students were engaged in authentic community partner-led learning opportunities, 55 families and community partners engaged in teaching students their skills and passions, and we had 12 different learning stations, including like I said, the salsa station and the public health station and the beekeeper station. So just lots of opportunities for students to see, the fruits of the labor of a garden. We obviously had to figure out how are we going to care for this garden in the summer. And so we had a family sign up, and every week a different family adopted the garden. We were able to share some of the produce at the farmer's market, and had just lots of different people engaged in it. Any questions so far?
I guess I have a quick question. So the like the kids that got involved, was this one class or was it multiple classes or
It was a whole school. It was the entire school.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, so we just really wanted to make sure that like every kid felt like it was their garden. Like the reason I was interested in that is because I thought like there are so many gardens that that just don't take off, and the reason they don't take off is because people don't see it as their own garden. And so this was we were really trying to focus on the idea of it being a community garden. So after that first season, we had some different hindsight ideas, but one of the biggest challenges that we had was we had too much food. We literally could not get the produce to the people as quickly as we had the produce. So as it turns out, and I'll let Eric talk a little bit at this point, I had gone to a food justice summit in Duluth. And there I met these friends who we told you about at the Alternative Learning Center. They had a huge garden, a much bigger garden than we did. Theirs was more like a mini farm, as you can tell from that center photo. And they had the same problem that we had, which was we all have too much food. And we knew it was great. We knew that kids were learning. We knew that it was highly engaging. We knew that it was building community. We knew that we were leveraging community resources. We knew like it was really an awesome opportunity, except we really struggled to think like, we can't just let this food go to waste. What are we going to do? And so at this food justice summit, like I said, I connected with ALC, and in this moment, we decided we would call the public library, where we called Eric and his boss Heather, who, like I said, will do anything that makes sense for the community. So Eric, I'll let you.
Yeah, and that's just where, like, I don't know, like the magic happened. It was just kind of like oh my gosh, yes, this makes total sense. We focus on summer programming. We have the bookmobile, we have outreach, we have all these things that we do during the summer. And even on our own, we had kind of, in like the library, our library and libraries always do, we ask ourselves, what more can we be doing for the community? And food justice is kind of something that we had been thinking about, even kind of on our own a little bit, but not really sure, like, where do we start? So this was just a perfect alignment of kind of the work that the public schools were doing and that the library was doing, and that we hadn't really like bumped into each other on this before until Lida and Katie, after the Food Justice Summit, had kind of started talking about it. And it was a perfect matchup of kind of our resources and their resources. And so that first summer of
Can
2018.
you talk about the matrix for a second? Can you talk about
yes.
the matrix?
So
I can't find my slide on
in
that.
Rochester have we have one central library that serves the Rochester area and kind of some of the surrounding county. But we have a bookmobile that does a lot of footwork for the rest of the area outside of kind of centralized Rochester. And they have a fairly sophisticated matrix program that they can dump in kind of information about the community and socioeconomic stuff, and kind of overlay kind of maps and kind of see where our outreach is, where the community need is, and how to kind of make that work better, so that we know that our bookmobile is reaching the areas that need it most. So it's kind of nice because we don't have branches, but we have very mobile community library spots. So we don't have specific branches anchored anywhere, but we have this bookmobile that can move and adjust and kind of build its outreach based on what this matrix tells us about the community need. So that was beneficial for us to know, like, hey, if we're going to be sharing food resources, where are the communities that need it most? And so we had kind of selected, like on this slide here, the bookmobile has several different stops, but we selected 5 of the top spots based on kind of the matrix of where this program could be best utilized. Um, Based on kind of population density, diversity, areas of low income, transportation barriers, which is a big one, and distance to the library, which also is big because we did share produce at the library also, but just like other library resources, we have to make sure that those who can't get to the library have access to it also. So we at the library had applied for grants also to help kind of fund our end of what we called Summer Playlist on the Road. Summer Playlist is what our library called our summer reading program, but it was more than just a reading program. It was about lots of engagement, activities, connections of all different sorts. Reading was part of it, but we called it our playlist of all the different things people wanted to kind of do and accomplish and try to kind of build their summer out of all these kind of activities and things. And so Playlist on the Road is where we took that to the bookmobile stops and incorporated this produce sharing as part of that programming. And it was an awesome, huge success. Like Lida had said earlier, we shared over a ton of produce that would have been lost kind of in the gardens over during the summer when schools weren't in session, and a lot of that just kind of would go to seed in the or in the garden.
One
So it was an
cool thing
awesome.
that, yeah, and then one cool thing that we had added to that was we thought, okay, so we're giving out, rutabaga and all sorts of different produce that like
Mm-hmm.
may not be super um, easy to understand, like what do I do with this rutabaga? So we had created these
Right.
little recipe cards, as you can see on the right. And so we kind of had this connection to literacy where we describe like what can you do with this produce and how do you make it taste good. um and so that
Right.
was a
So that
really
was
cool
all.
connection.
Yeah, that was part of the programming and part of the shared resources and shared
Mhm.
information and connections and things like that.
We had also done like different art activities that would partner well with um some of the produce that we were using as well. So it was kind of
Mhm.
at the bookmobile stops, like it wasn't just the books in the bookmobile, it was lots of engaging activities um,
Yeah.
that existed for kids to engage in. Does anybody have any questions?
So I guess one of my questions is like, what when we talk about the food, so what was the word you used? You said food justice?
Apartheid.
Okay.
Yeah, food
And
justice.
food justice. Yeah.
You just kind of
Mhm.
like unpack that a little
So
bit.
so originally Lida had said that she had gone to the Food Justice Summit in 2017, which I hadn't gone to, but I'll jump ahead a little bit. After this 2018 kickoff of our partnership and 2019 continuation of our partnership, we ended up going to the 2019 Food Justice Summit and presenting, kind of similar to what we're doing right now, presenting what we did and how it, like, how easy it can be to kind of like work together and kind of share your resources for a much bigger impact than what you can do each individually. So we shared at the Food Justice Summit in 2019. So it's something that like communities are addressing the fact that like food isn't accessible. There's the term food deserts that
Yep.
had been kind of used for a while, but it's much more complex than that. It isn't just a desert. It's like
It's a
Lita had said,
system of
apartheid.
segregation
It's
really that divides
exactly. It's kind of
people with access and
systemic.
abundance to, right.
So that's why
To nutritious
justice
food.
kind of comes into it also, right? So it's a big, big kind of complex systemic kind of issue that each one of us can kind of do a small part or work together to do a bigger part to try to make an impact to improve and help your community.
Does that help, Sam? Sam, does that kind of get at your,
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think Roger's got his hand up as well.
oh, I'm sorry, I can't see you, Roger.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead,
know,
Roger.
yeah, I was doing it really for Sam, so he would know. On objective number 2, expanding participation, new systems and sectors, I found that when I did similar kinds of ventures to what you're doing, I always ran into problems trying to get places and organizations to work with us. And I'm just curious if you guys ran into that kind of problem and how you got around it, particularly if you were using county facilities or, some kind of omnibus organization facilities.
Yeah, this is a great question. And I think, so my job right now is called Coordinator of Community Partnerships. And so basically, that's kind of what I do for a job, is foster good relations with community organizations. And so I do all sorts of things. In this case, it was a perfect partnership because we, both ALC and Riverside, had this need. We had too much food. And then we had the public library, who was genuinely wanting to support efforts that focused on exactly the type of engagement that we could produce together. And so in that case, I mean, it doesn't, as you're referencing, like, it doesn't always happen that way. But in this case, it was the perfect partnership because all of the stakeholders had the same goal.
Right. Sometimes partnerships, different organizations, I don't know, they're very focused on their own organization, almost to a fault, where sometimes it's hard for them to open their vision wide enough to fully incorporate the potential of another organization into their kind of fold. So I totally agree. Working at the library and working with some partners in the past, it's difficult sometimes, and so it is sometimes. I've gotten kind of burnout on trying to do partnerships, but like Lida said, this one was just perfect because the public schools and the public library both have a kind of a shared philosophy anyway of just community improvement, and it was just a very good partnership from the get-go.
Good, I appreciate that. Are you city or county? And I don't want to dwell on this, but that's my own curiosity. Are you city or county?
That's a tricky question. So Rochester Public Library is mostly city, kind of county. It's interesting, like there's some percentage, of funding and resources kind of thing in there. So, but here's an interesting thing that did come about. When we presented at the 2019 Food Justice Summit, a lot of county, Rochester is in Olmsted County. A lot of county and other city organizations did attend, and we kind of in the same way that Lida met with ALC and kind of brainstormed in 2017. We and the rest of, and I shouldn't say the rest of, but other city and county organizations brainstormed at the 2019 summit, and then came back to form what is called, let me see if I can get this right, the Olmsted County Food Justice Coalition. So I'm on that with other members from the community, city and county, even like the farmers market and Olmsted County Public Health. And
I'm on it. I just haven't.
And, oh, Lena's supposed to be there. She's just doesn't. She's so busy. She's just so busy. But yes, there are
I'm new
lots
in my
of
role, but yeah.
That's right. But
Well,
yes,
thanks.
so
I
each
didn't
month
wanna-
we have a meeting. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I didn't want to take up all the time on this particular thing,
No,
but thank you, Sharon.
it's a great question, and I didn't want to, because it is like it's a complex. It's kind of a complex answer because city and county are kind of starting to get involved in all of this, but it's still because of COVID, things kind of got
Yeah.
paused and slowed down for a couple years. And right now we're trying to get the momentum built back up. We had gotten grant money to do like an assessment of Olmsted County food security. And so it's a very complex thing that all started mostly because of this partnership between Rochester Public Schools and the library. So it's awesome that our little steps kind of are creating these big
Big
impacts.
systems wide changes.
Right.
Good.
So yeah, go ahead, Sam. What were you going to say? I heard you.
I was going to ask just a clarifying question. I know you showed the Alternative Learning Center. What was the connection there? So I understand Lida, I understand Eric, but where's the Alternative Learning Center? How does that all connect?
So Liz, the person that we
Ah,
mentioned, that
got it.
she was a teacher at the Alternative Learning Center, and she was just this like amazing force of like positivity and and
And work.
I mean, exactly. And she loved gardening, and she loved incorporating, like, because the Alternative Learning Center incorporates these non-traditional um, means into their curriculum. So the garden was her baby, um, and I kind of came
She was
into
a
it
science
through,
teacher. She was a science teacher. So that was her curricular connection.
and there was another teacher, Katie Sloan, who I kind of, and because even before Liz passed away, she moved away. So Katie kind of took it over, and we've all been kind of trying to keep up with Liz's, inspiration. Um, but the ALC has a bigger garden, and it's more of their curriculum because they bring that deeper into their curriculum as kind of non-traditional learning.
Thank you.
Mhm. I
Any
forgot
other
where I
questions?
left off as far as like the library ramblings, but if there are any more questions,
I have so many questions.
I love them. I love the questions.
So Eric, you said you were burned out on partnerships, and so I completely respect that.
Sometimes.
Yeah, no, but I understand the sentiment. I really get that. It sounds like, I mean, like, face value, what you're doing here, and Lida, this is kind of a loaded question because I know I asked you this question way back when we started talking about this presentation with Rotary clubs, right? So I know it's a loaded question, but it sounds like this is a perfect opportunity, for other organizations such as Rotary to get involved and to support, whether it's through activity or through potential curricular support or subject matter expertise if we had gardening or folks who are horticulture experts, or just funding. Like, so I guess where does that burnout come from? Can you tell me about that? Like, how can we avoid that? I guess is my point. If we had a chance to do something like this to support you, how can we avoid that burnout and just be helpful?
Ooh, that's a good question. Really, like, I think the burnout comes from when, and here's where it gets tricky, like when an organization like knows their focus and is so like driven with that focus that it's hard for them to see other places that they could use the skills that they have and the resources that they have to benefit the community in other ways. So sometimes partnerships feel like two organizations that do great things separately, but they're not doing great things together. Um, um, and the thing with kind of our partnership was that I mean, I think it benefits us that, I don't know, like, and here's what it feels like from my end. We kind of went into it like kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. So we didn't have any preconceived like ideas like this is what we want it to be. And the schools weren't kind of like this is what we want it to be. So it just kind of developed naturally. Um, and I think that's a pretty good partnership when both partners can kind of go in like without too strong of an agenda on either end, but knowing that we just want to, do what's best,
Right.
and really listening to the community. Like
Mhm.
food access has been like murmured through the community for years and years and years, but we just didn't know how to approach it until this little seed got planted, and it's like, oh, this is great.
Well, and I would just add that I think for successful partnerships to work, you really have to have a shared vision and shared goals. Like if you don't have that alignment, it's probably not going to work. Right, just right off the bat. The other thing I would say is regular check-ins, to make small corrections along the way rather than like getting too far down the road saying like, oh my gosh, you did this and this isn't at all what we had intended. So I think just like maintaining those regular connections is really really impactful and important. And I think determining like who's doing what and when, just the logistical aspects of things are really important. I think kind of to Eric's point, we often in partnerships will like draft up like a partnership agreement or a contract or something like that. But what was beneficial and valuable about this particular partnership and why it works so well is because we built all that together. It wasn't one organization saying like, here's the partnership agreement, like sign off. Now you do all these
Mhm.
things. It was, here's what we bring to the table. Here's what you bring to the table. Here's our shared expectations. And let's do this together. So I guess in terms of partnership, I think we've probably, we've learned a lot, but I think those are some of the most important parts to creating a functional and successful partnership.
I don't want to interrupt, so please keep going. But if you're soliciting more questions, I have.
Go ahead. Let's hear it.
Well, one of the things that I think is ignorant for me to say, and I'm totally admitting that, is that I don't really understand the concepts clearly enough to see them in our communities wherever we are. And so Denise is in the Netherlands, but I think Denise dropped. But for the rest of us, let's just make it simple and let's just limit our conversation to let's say the Treasure Coast of Florida. In your opinion, not being from here, obviously, but in your opinion, is that something that we potentially are experiencing here? And do you have evidence of that? Could you just say, yeah, of course you're experiencing there. Any major metropolitan area in America is going to experience that for the following reasons. Could you just kind of touch on that for me?
Are you trying to figure out how you would work collaboratively together? Is that what you're saying?
Well,
Around
like,
a common issue
well, I'm
or a
not
common
so
challenge?
just
Are you
the
talking about
concept.
food justice?
Food justice, the specific
Food
concept.
justice specifically?
Specifically. So I know,
Well, yeah.
I know
So
statistically, underserved communities are obviously going to be more prone to diabetes. They're going to have, food stamps and things that support junk food, and it basically pushes them into crap eating, right?
Mm.
I understand that, but I guess in terms of what we're doing to impact the community in this effort.
So what I
today.
would say, and I think this is like an absolute priority, I think this is something that as schools we have done a lot, and this is not historically we've done this. We as people, who want to do good in our communities or in our areas, often don't ask enough about what the actual needs of the community are. We do things, I think sometimes organizations with the best of intentions are doing things to groups of people or to communities that aren't necessarily what the communities would want. So one of the major things that I think is a huge priority when undertaking any type of this work is to do a needs assessment. And not just like send a survey, because we know that there's certain people who are going to fill out a survey and there's plenty of people who aren't. So you're going to get a certain demographic of people to fill out a survey that isn't necessarily reflective of the entire population. So if you've ever read the book or looked into the book, it's called Street Data. It's an educational book, but really, I mean, the concepts are the same. You want to do things like focus groups where you're actually engaging with people and in potentially in their native language or, on the street, in the community, doing focus groups, things like that allow you to get information that you can put together to find correlations in what needs actually exist so that you're actually addressing the problem rather than just doing what you think would address a problem, or even what you think, or what, you know, what the problem actually is, right? And so it allows you to address the roots of the challenges that are faced, and whether that is food justice, food access, food apartheid, like, you know, and how to go about doing that.
That
Does
really
that help?
yeah, that really resonates with me. I'm reading not reading, I finished it a while back, but Strategic Doing. And so after I read Strategic Doing, which I highly recommend for anybody who hasn't read it, especially if you have any kind of nonprofit, you know, grassroots kind of connections like this to do things, was that exact step. And I feel like we've missed that step so often. And I'll just say something that this is going to be recorded, so any Rotarian who watches this, I'm going to apologize in advance. But one thing that I had a problem with, frankly, was when I was in Anchorage, and this is a Rotary program nationwide in the U.S. It's very common. You see they give out dictionaries to kids, and so I don't know if you guys have experience with that, where you see it in the school. I guess, I mean, no disrespect whatsoever, I just feel like that is not the most beneficial thing that we could do in a classroom, as Rotarians. And
I agree 100%.
I agree
It's
100%.
so antiquated. It's very 1960.
and I wish that we could, have that conversation and say, look, the amount of money you spend on dictionaries, you could write a check to Rochester Public Library and do this, right? And that's like, whoa, that's, to me, that's so powerful, and it's so simple. It's just
One of the,
Getting-
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, I was going to jump in on two things. Number one, the West Palm Beach Rotary Club, Sam, every year before COVID, and frankly, I haven't followed up since then, but they used to have a day when Rotary clubs from around the area would get together, and they would put together, in essence, food kits and they would distribute them to areas that were the islands that you were talking about, where food is needed. And the other thing with the dictionaries, I couldn't agree more. Also, schools, when you talk about assessments, Lida, what the schools really want is for us to come in and work with the kids and read with them and do things like that, much more than dictionaries.
Right.
Matter of fact, at the local high school that we were at, operating the Internet Club, we did a book collection that was sent to the islands, and half of the books that came back, and these are 12th graders, with the dictionaries we gave out to these kids when we were in 3rd grade. So, yeah. But again, without an assessment, you don't really know what their needs are. And you've got to talk to them and get the focus groups. So sorry, that was my 2 cents.
No, that's a
No, that's
really
good.
good point.
Can I chime in for
Oh.
just a second? This is Kimberly. I was really glad to see, because I was thinking, as you were talking about all this food, I'm thinking somebody handed me a rutabaga and I would have no earthly clue what to do with a rutabaga. So the fact that you have the recipe cards, have you ever thought about following that up with having a location where you can actually do food demonstrations? I know carting around like a campsite, taking these things out, but involving the children and chopping the veggies and actually fixing the meal. And
Yeah,
and
no,
being
you're
good at
so, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And that was actually one really fun thing that we had done, is we had gotten a local grocery store involved. I mean, in this particular partnership, okay, so there are a couple things. In our schools, that became a big thing. Like, how can we use this produce? And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you'd like to look at this, public health has lots of guidelines around how food can be used. And so utilizing even the food from the garden was challenging. We found ways around it, but nonetheless, we actually worked with a local grocery store in our after school program, who would come in and utilize some of the ingredients to be able to teach kids, like, okay, you're at home, like, here, let's make a tortilla pizza. Here, you can use the tomatoes. We'll send you home with a little package of cheese. And, here's some veggies from the garden that we can dice up and you can have on your pizza. So those are kind of, we really wanted to get from, like, what do you do with it, into, and get away from, like, oh, here's some easy mac for dinner, versus like, oh, you can actually make yourself a homemade pizza with a tortilla and, a little bit of sauce and some garden produce.
I mean, that's how I make mine. I use the Indian naan bread from the store and put my homemade spaghetti sauce on it and a little bit of cheese, and I'm done. But just, I find that having children food, and I get the food laws and all the rest of that stuff. Nobody wants salmonella. It's not a fun diet, but having children actually involved in the prep, they're more likely to eat the things that they would otherwise turn their nose up at, because it's something that they made and something they contributed in. And to Sam's point about metropolitan, I live up in the mountains of West Virginia. I live up in the Cacapan Mountains in a touristy town. So fortunately, I have a grocery store. But if I really want to do some shopping, I have to travel 30 some miles and go into Winchester, Virginia, if I want a larger variety. I have the mechanism to do that, but not everybody up here in the hollers has that opportunity. So it's not just the big metropolitan areas, it's these small little backwater places where all you have is maybe the local 7-Eleven or corner store that doesn't sell any fresh fruit or fresh veg. And it is everything that comes out of a box. And what was the new study that came out? I just saw it yesterday, the news flash, that the use of highly processed foods and the eating of highly processed foods has been linked now to the onset of dementia.
Not surprising.
Some new study
And
that
that's
just came out yesterday or the day before, whatever.
That's something we did discover because we did do some kind of food prep tutorials and things like that at our different programming. But part of what we kind of discovered and kind of had to look at, and accept was the fact, like you say, it wasn't that they didn't know how to make a meal. It's just that they might not have the time, they might not have those ingredients in their refrigerator or their cupboard. A lot of folks are just living out of box food because that's what's shelf stable, that's what they can afford, that's what they can make quickly. So for us to kind of get stuck on the idea that, like, oh, here's how we fix it, we teach them how to make a meal, that's where we had to kind of backtrack and look at it. It's like, nope, that's not what the issue is. It's about even like affordable housing. Like they have to work 2 jobs to pay their rent, so they don't have time to sit down and prep these meals. So it's a bigger issue. So we really kind of stepped away from doing the meal prep programming at the library because it was kind of a wasted effort and kind of a bit insulting that we thought that was the problem that needed to be fixed.
Okay.
So just presenting them with food and letting them choose to do whatever they want with it was a much stronger connection. Basically us acknowledging, like, hey, we know you're strapped and you might not have time and resources and extra cash to have some extra food in your fridge. So here, take this, and thank you for visiting us today, and we hope to see you next week, kind of thing.
Okay,
But
yeah, I
it
hadn't
is
looked
like
at it from that perspective, but because I love the cooking shows, I watch the cooking shows all the time. But I've been living in a house now that hasn't had a kitchen the whole time I've lived in it, so I'm like them. I'm living out of what I can put in a microwave, and my kitchen isn't done yet because I'm living in a renovation site, so I don't have a kitchen. So I know what that's like, and you're stuck. I can't even fix stuff on the top of the stove. If it was the mac and cheese, because I don't have a stove hooked up. My life is microwave food. So I know how hard that can be, and you get stuck in that rut. I'd love to be able to cook, and I have the wherewithal. My kitchen will be done one of these days, inshallah. As we always used to say over in the Middle East, inshallah, my kitchen will be done one day. One day, madam, your kitchen will be done, inshallah. So for people who don't see that light at the end of the tunnel, it's got to be very difficult for them.
Exactly.
And I'm not working 3 jobs to support myself. I'm only working 1 part-time.
Right. Yeah. It's getting into this aspect of our community work. It does. It like removes the blinders on a lot of things. And we do realize that, like, man, this is a big, daunting task, but we can only do what we can do. And so if it's sharing food, then that's what we're going to do, and we're not going to turn it into something else. And that's, like, to go back to the partnership thing, that's sometimes where the burnout or the kind of conflict comes in, where certain organizations want to still think it's about this, and well, here's what we're doing to solve this problem, we're doing this, and it's like, but this isn't really helping solve the problem, it's helping even sometimes perpetuate the problem. This isn't what the community's asking for, this is what you're offering, so they're taking it, so it looks good on your stats, but it's something
It
else, because
hasn't
even
solved the
our
basic problem.
exactly, during COVID, our food bank here in Rochester and the surrounding area, like, did an assessment with the community and restructured their entire process on how they intake people, what they require of them, how their what and how the food is like what food is available and how it's available, and so they did an awesome overhaul of their process and are still kind of learning in these years. But yeah, it's been a big time of reflection.
That's
One thing I know we're running against the clock here, but one
Oh,
thing
we are.
I did put in the chat is, this is actually, so it's going back to the partnership question. This story came out just yesterday on Minnesota Public Radio News, and it's just about, it's another example of a partnership that's working really well for us. And part of the reason is, I mean, this example specifically, I know I shared this with Sam, and it's something I'm really, really jazzed about. So I'm just going to quick share it. So you think about the barriers that exist if you don't have a driver's license, right? You know, you can't get to a job, you potentially can't get to post-secondary, opportunities, access, all sorts of things. Super expensive, but we were able to partner, and of course you have to have a vehicle. Someone in your family has to have a vehicle to be able to do transportation, so that you can get the 50 hours that are required for you to even take your test. And so we've partnered with Rochester Police Department, and Olmsted County, who donated 3 vehicles so that each of our high schools could have their own vehicle. And Enhanced Drivers Institute, who comes into the school so that kids don't have to, so that you don't have to have transportation. And you'll hear, I mean, if you actually listen to the story, like, you'll hear really the why, and you got to listen to it. Don't just read it, you should listen to it. But this is another example of like really high level partnerships that are working together around a specific issue and a specific challenge. And in this case, it's for the police department. For us in education, it's, we want our kids to have access to educational opportunities and to job opportunities in the future. For the police department, we have all sorts of people entering the criminal justice system if they're driving without a license. So you think about the cost to a community. Anyway, those are the reasons that I guess my point in saying all that is, you really have to find the real genuine need that exists in the community or exists in the space that you're trying to do work, in order for it to work. And so these are just this public library partnership with the food access, and this one that I just shared around driver's ed are 2 examples that I think really speak to the need and the reason why partnerships are successful around that shared vision.
Eric, Lida, thank you so much for the presentation. Really, really appreciate it. I think we're gonna hopefully have some outcomes here that we can try to enact in our areas, and just use this as an inspiration, if anything. What I would offer is out of respect for your time, I want to assume that you do have something else to do today. What I'll do is I'll close the meeting. I'm going to hit stop on the record, and then if there's interest from you two, if you wanted to drop, you can drop. If you want to hang out for another moment for more questions, we can do that. But thank you officially. Really, really appreciate it. We're looking forward to following what you're doing online and following what you're doing in the community. So thank you so much.
Thank
you
you.
guys.
Thank you.